Okay, so in our last tutorial, we made a little playing area, and we made our player, and we made it so our player can move in 4 directions. Alright, cool. So in this episode, we're going to expand the playing area a little bit, and then we're going to work on a simple puzzle for the player to solve. This is going to be a button that opens a door. Alright, so let's get started. Let's go ahead and expand our playing area a little bit. I'm using the duplicate trick, Control D on a selected object, and then I'm going to vertex snap by holding V. Perfect. I'm going to do that a couple times here. We just kind of want to expand this out a little bit. Alright, get a little stretch right there. Put this one more, and then we're going to start to turn it a little bit. This one. Then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. You can go ahead and snap that corner here. Alright. One more. And another 90 degrees. Go ahead and snap that corner. Okay. So, right around here, I want to start to plan out a kind of a little area for a button to go that the player can escape into. So let's see here. I'm probably going to expand this a little bit more over on this area, and I'm going to duplicate this. Let's see here. If I snapped here, what's that? 12.5. Okay, so I'm going to put 12.5 here. And since I duplicated it from this one, it's already lined up. So now we have a perfect little entryway right here. I'm going to take this block, duplicate it. I'm going to rotate it back to 0 on the Y. That's a little too big right now, so I think I'm going to put the Z on the scale down to 3.5. I'm going to go ahead and snap that in, duplicate it again, snap. Oop, perfect. I can take one of these bigger ones back here, duplicate it. And it looks like it's a little too big on one side, but if we snap it here, it's actually perfectly sized, so yeah, you can't even, you won't even notice it. Yeah, there's not even any Z fighting. Okay, so that's perfect. So now we have this like little alleyway that we can put a button for the player to explore. And then over here, we can start drawing out a little door out of cubes. So I'll just do that now. Let's take a duplicate of this guy right here, and let's take him out of our walls parent object right here. Let's go ahead and call this door. Nice and easy. Now this door looks an awful lot like these walls here, and we kind of want to differentiate it a little bit. So I think I'm going to pick a new color. So I'm going to go to Materials, Create, and make a material. I'm just going to call it Door for now. I'm going to pick red. You can pick whatever color you want, but red's nice against green because it's a contrasting color, so it stands out. Alright, cool. Let's go ahead and rotate this on the Y back to 0. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like this one doesn't have to snap exactly, it just has to block the way. But you'll notice there's a little bit of something called Z fighting right here. It's that kind of weird, flickering, overlapping, blech. Yeah, does not look good. So the way to fix that is you can just kind of slightly lower that block a little bit, and now you don't get that nasty Z fighting. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as you're like eyeballing around the midpoint of these blocks, you should be okay. As long as you're kind of blocking this area here, you should be alright. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our button. Go to Game Object, 3D Object, and this time, ooh, mixing it up. Let's pick a cylinder here. And we're going to use the Scale tool to squish it down, fatten it up, squish it down a little bit more. And again, this one doesn't have to be perfect, like pretty much right around the middle of this area will look good, and just make it look nice. And let's sink it into the floor a little bit. And I'm going to make it the same color as the door, just because it stands out, and since this door is also red, you'd think it'd be it would hint to the player that this would open that. Just a little subtle hint. Okay, so now if we move our player over here, try to go through the door, that's not happening. We're blocked. But if we hit this button, we just kind of ride on top of it. It's really weird. It's because there's a collider here. If you can see those light green lines, that's colliding with our box, and we don't want that to happen because it looks weird and it'll launch the player into the stratosphere. So what we can do is, with the cylinder selected, go to the capsule collider component and see the thing that says is trigger, hit that. Also, while we're at it, let's go ahead and say button as the name, just so we don't get it confused with anything else. Okay, so now if we hit it with the player, he'll just kind of go right through it. So now he doesn't bump up or anything. Now this is good because even though there's no collision, well there is, it doesn't like stop the player. It'll still detect it because it is a trigger. And we can program that right now. So let's go ahead and go back to our scripts folder, right click, create a new script. It's gonna be C#. Let's call it button. And make sure to drag this button script onto your button. And go ahead and double click to open it up. Alright, there we go. We can do a little formatting here. Okay, so we need to explore a did we go through here? No, we need to explore a new function here. This will be how we detect with triggers. So we start with a new function, and it's going to be void, and that's a return type. You don't have to worry about that right now, but it is important. Now, keep in mind that capital letters in this are very important. So follow along. On, trigger, enter. Just like that. And then you're going to put in open parentheses, say collider other. And you can close that out. Go ahead and put your curly brackets there too. Make sure that it's in your class, but not in one of these functions, and you're good. Okay, so what this does is every time a rigid body enters a trigger, which the trigger would be on this button here, it will call this function, and then it will assign other, which is a collider, to whatever collider has entered that trigger. So what we need to do is we need to differentiate these triggers somehow. We need to tag our player. So we go back down here to our player. You can see I already did this because this is actually a second recording. I had to restart. But you should see it as untagged. So you can go ahead and click this, and there's already a pre-made tag called player. You can go ahead and click that. And now our player is known by the engine to being tagged as a player. You could also do this with names, but it's just not as precise, and it's easier to get, you know, capitalization mixed up. So anyway, we're going to need another if statement here. We're going to start with if other, which is the collider that's colliding, and then we're going to get the game object out of it, lowercase g, if other.gameObject.tag. That's a component too. Equals equals. And you're going to need those double quotation marks there because this is a literal string. Player, capitalization is important here, and you can close that parenthesis right there and put your curly brackets. Okay, so what's happening here? When the player enters that green looking sphere, that's the trigger. As soon as that happens, this function is called. And as soon as that function is called, it will go to this if statement, and it will ask, is the other collider its game object, does its tag equal player? And if that is true, then we can say, just for now, debug.log the button has been pressed, semicolon. All right, cool. So if we hit that button and look in our console here after it compiles, just give it a second, there we go. It should say the button has been pressed. All right, we can do that over and over again. Woo, fun. But it doesn't actually open this door here. We're gonna need a reference for that. So let's go back to our script real quick, and let's make a public at the top of the class above all the start and all the other functions. Public transform, and I'll just call it door for now, and then a semicolon at the end. Okay, so we should see a little transform pop up here, and there it is. Go ahead and select your, actually no, don't select, just drag your door from the hierarchy into the inspector here, and you should see door with a little gizmo icon in there. Now once you have that, you have reference to this door's transform component, which means we can start moving this door around from a different object. How cool is that? So let's go ahead and comment this line by putting a couple slashes there. Now let's go ahead and transform the door. So we have the door's reference, so we can say door dot position minus equal, and we're going to be subtracting a vector 3, because if you hover this, I guess you can't do that in Model Develop. I'm used to Visual Studio. Normally you can hover it and see the data type at once, but anyway, it's subtracting a vector 3, so we're going to need a new vector 3, so we're actually making a variable on the spot in the line. So vector 3 is going to want 3 floats right here. Since we're moving, let me see real quick just to make sure. Yeah, we're moving in Z, so we're going to need to subtract Z. Okay, so we don't need anything on X, so we can say 0. We don't need anything on Y, so we can say 0. Now on Z, let's say 5. That sounds good to me. Alright, so if we hit this button collider, or this button trigger, this door should move down 5. Let's see. Bonk. Yes, it did. Alright, so now the door is open, we can go through. Now there is actually a problem with this. On your initial time pressing that trigger, this works just fine. However, if you touch it again and again and again, that door just keeps going on forever. So we're going to need to make a boolean value here. And what that's going to do is lock the door so it doesn't keep going on forever. So this value actually does not need to be public. You can just say bool, B-O-O-L. This is a true or false data type. Door open. And we're going to set that to false. Okay, so by default, door open is false. So what we can do here in this line is say if other.gameObject.tag equals player and 2 ampersands is an and symbol, and door open equals false, then open the door. Now after this, we need to set door open to true. That way, if it goes through this logic again, door open is true is not correct. Door open needs to be false for this to run. So essentially, it locks it open. So now, if we go ahead and try, can't get through the door, hit the button, bonk, and it's open. And if we hit the button again, it doesn't make our door go a billion miles away. All right, perfect. All right, so I am gonna go ahead and end the episode here. In our next episode, we're gonna start expanding a little bit more and make a boss chamber with a boss that drops a key. So I'll see you in the next episode.